I've noticed something really interesting in the business world, that when someone finishes a presentation or a talk or some kind of speech, that inevitably there's two words that they always hear. Good job. It doesn't matter how well they did, they always hear those same two words. In fact, if they do really well, how does it come across? Confident, relaxed, hey, good job. And if they don't do so well, then the pitch rises slightly and it softens, hey, good job. And if it's just okay, it's great's not bad, then it comes across just casual. Yeah, good job. And regardless of what they did and how well they did, what happens? The person who's speaking walks away having no idea of how well they actually did. Now, I work as a corporate trainer, so every single week I'm working with teams and leaders and companies, and I see this again and again and again, where people, they work hard, they get ready, they're performing, they're presenting, and then over and over and over again, they have no idea how well they actually did, and so they don't know what to build on or what to change. I was working with one gentleman, let's call him Russ, and Russ was getting ready for this high stakes presentation, lots of people are there, and he's getting ready for it, and he's stressing, he's working, he's preparing, and he gets up in front of all these people and he presents, and he's walking away going, okay, I'm ready to understand how to make that better the next time. He's not looking for reassurance. He doesn't need someone just to fluff him up and make it feel better. He's looking to grow. So he goes into his manager, because his manager didn't offer him the feedback. He goes in, he says, how did I do? And the manager says, good job. And he walks away and he comes to talk to me and says, fine. I feel like some of what I did was good, and some of what I did was not good. I just don't know which was which. And it stood out to me in that moment that often our confidence doesn't decrease because of criticism, it decreases because of uncertainty. Now, as a human being, we are wired to look for patterns. Even when we walk into a place like this, we are assessing the room. We're wondering where we stand. Or if you really want to take it back, think about middle school. Every time you walk into a room, you're wondering, where do I stand? And when you feel safe, it relaxes you and you're ready to learn. But if you don't feel safe, the whole time you're on edge. Ambiguity has the same neural pathways as that of threat. When you do not know where you stand, it registers as stress, which is not conducive to growth. Now, they study this across education organizations, psychology, on, and over, they find out when there's good feedback, it helps people unlock potential and grow. Makes sense. In fact, they did a meta-analysis. They reviewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of situations, and they saw that over 2/3 of those situations, when there was great feedback, people grew. But still, 1/3 of those situations, people were not growing. So they dove in deep. What is happening here? Why are people not growing at these situations? Was the feedback harsh? No. Was it overly critical? No. It was vague. Feedback without specifics, without details, without orientations does not provide help. Positivity is not the same as clarity. Now, this shows up a couple different ways in our society. Sometimes when we're getting feedback or receiving feedback or getting it, we'll see this. That we opt for comfort without courage. Now, what this sounds like is, hey, good job. You see the specifics, you see what was not good, you see where they could get better, but you want to be kind. You don't want to rain on the parade. And you say, good job on that. Comfort without courage. Other times we go correction without connection. And this is where you see what they did wrong and you're going to point it out. Hey, this is what you did wrong, this is what you need to clean up, this is what you need to do different next time, here's where you are off, here's where you messed up. I'm just being kind because I'm being candid. But the person hears threats, and so it doesn't help them grow. Other times, we just go silent because we're not sure what to do, and so, hey, I'll just not say anything. It just feels more neutral, but silence is rarely neutral. Silence is perceived as ambivalence and indifference. And when someone knows that you do not care about their growth, then guess what? they don't grow. And the fourth way that this can show up is where you care in such a way that's strong enough to be clear. This is where you say, I see your potential. I understand what you could do and where this could go, and let me show you what is taking you away from that. When I was in college, I was taking a pre-law class, and I wrote a 24-page paper for one of my classes. And I submitted it, and I got back, and I started looking through the first 5 pages. It had so much red ink, long written sentences, lots of things crossed out. It looked like the professor bled all over the page. And I got to the 5th page, and at the very bottom was a long note, and essentially it said, Mike, at this point in time, I'm going to stop putting you in for critiques. I'm just going to assume that the rest of the 19 pages are as bad as the first 5. And then he said these words, Mike, you're better than this. He cared. I felt that, even in the midst of the immense discomfort. See, this is what I call the feedback paradox, that we want care, but we want candor. In fact, a lot of times when I'm working with somebody, they say, Mike, just give me the truth. Just give me. And I say, you can't handle the truth. And then I say, you actually need to know what you need to build on as well. You need the care, because when I give you care, it unlocks the ability to be candid with you. So, feedback requires both of these elements here. How to actually go about giving this? How can you start giving feedback in a way that helps people, not making them feel threatened and not making them feel uncertain? How? It's easy. Here's what worked. Here's what did not work. And here's something for you to shift. Because even though we love care and we love the truth of what we should do differently, we also want some room for us to make our own decisions. So here's what worked. Here's what did not work. And here's some area where you might consider shift. Now, even as I say that, you're thinking, okay, I gave that kind of feedback. It still wasn't received well. In fact, I just gave it to my kids this morning. I gave it to my parents. I gave it to my friend. I gave it to a colleague. Or you think about a time where somebody gave it to you and just didn't feel right. Something was misaligned. And often it's not the words, but it's the role which gave that feedback, that misalignment. See, we see this with our kids, that sometimes when we give some kind of information, they don't receive it in the way that we want them to. Anybody realize that before? In fact, maybe you're giving your kids some kind of feedback, and they shrug it off. And later on, they hear the same words from their teacher, their mentor, or their coach. They get in the car with you like that. My teacher's so wise. They said these words. And they quote the same words that you gave them, but now they give all the credit to the teacher. And inside you're fuming. But hopefully they actually get it. My teacher is so wise. Why is it? Well, social psychology shows us that we receive identical information differently based on who gives it. So how does that pertain to feedback? Well, there are different roles that we have on giving feedback. See, if I am the expert in a relationship, yet I get tentative feedback that comes across as ambivalence. He must just not care. He just doesn't really know what to say. He's uncertain. So I weaken the ability to direct that person. Yet if I'm the learner, if I'm the peer, and I come across with expert guidance for them, then they will perceive it as dominance. So how do we do this? Let's walk through these roles as a human path to how to give the correct type of feedback. If you are the expert in a relationship, by role, by authority, by your knowledge of that area, then your role is to provide clear guidance. That means that you walk through, here's what worked, and you go into detail. Here's what worked and why. Let me map it out for you. Let me help you understand what you did that was really good and why. And then you go, and here's what did not work, and you do it kind. And then third, and here's some areas where you shift. Now you want to go deep into that because you have an expert role in that person's relationship, in that person's position. Now, if you are not the expert and you are a peer, then you approach it differently. You don't provide guidance because you don't have that role. You provide perspective. So it goes more like this. When you did this right here, I really liked what you did. That came across really well. Here's why I thought it came across so well. Yeah, well, you did this over here. I wasn't so sure about that. How we understand why you did it that way. Now, when you approach it that way as a peer, the person looks up and goes, oh, that's really great. And that type of humility unlocks their request for more feedback. And if you're the learner, we've all been the learner where we want to give feedback to someone at authority, correct? Whether it's school, whether it's the government, whether it's someone in our career, and we want to give them feedback. And sometimes we approach it from an expert standpoint, but it doesn't work, does it? So here's where you approach it with humble curiosity. And you say, when you do this, and when you act this way, it always seems to work out so well. Why do you think it works so well? In other words, here's what. Yeah, when you do this right here, we're going into here's what did not work. I don't understand that. Could you help me understand why you did that?
And when you ask that, it might actually be the best feedback that they receive because now they're making the decision themselves that what they did was not something that worked.
Or they might call you understand. And then you ask them, now what would you do different? Sometimes the best type of feedback is simple, honest question. Now, when we approach feedback this way, here's what worked. Here's what didn't work. Here's what needs to shift. And we know the role that we are in with that person. Now, we are providing evaluation or not providing evaluation or providing the orientation. In other words, evaluation is a look at the past, but an orientation is a look to the future. And when you provide feedback that way, you're helping that person move in to the future. So I challenge you, next time that you are tempted to say, good job, look at the role that you are into that person. Are you an expert? Are you a peer? Are you a learner? And then respond from that role with a simple, here's what worked, here's what didn't, and here's what needs to shift. Don't just be kind by being encouraging. Being kind by having the courage to say the words that can move the person forward. Thank you.